It's like we're back in the studio. Los Angeles, 1997.
That's a good analogy.
Brett Gurwitz behind the controls. This is Brett.
I don't need to tell the truth, but I never lie. I don't need to bow to you. You're just passing by. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I'll come back to you. Get inside my troubled mind with all of your threats. Sometimes I think I was blind. Not before we met. I never wanted to be the one that you depend on for your life. When you cry, it smells like soup. Sound like Shonen knife. Never feel how I said all night. I gotta ride. Each time I said all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all night. You're an evil little girl. I'm a twisted man, tearing through your perfect world. Make you understand. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I'll come back to you and do the things you do. Stay all night. I gotta ride. Each time I stay all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all. I would never treat you bad. You deserve the best from me. If you want to keep your place, you better get down on yours.
Yeah, Todd wrote this one.
Yeah. You think?
This is not mine.
Stand all night, I gotta ride. Each time I stand all night, no, I just might. You make me stand all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stand all night. I'm gonna stand all night.
R.I.P. Todd.
Round Robin. Questions, comments, wagers, give us a reason. Sleeper fantasy play, your best alternative line, whatever you have. Text the Round Robin 757-354-5517.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose cross stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take us past our spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the brave and the home of the brave.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
You are tuned in to the Round Robin with Stephen Murray on Deep End Broadcasting.
Get me down.
Thursday afternoon, August the 24th, 2023. It is 4:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And here we are. August is wrapping up, coming to a wrapping end here as we approach Labor Day weekend and football. In fact, we have games this weekend. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and start with that. And then I'll look at the baseball slate real quick after that. Only a handful of games. We'll update you with everything that happened today as well. And then Dave Grande will be on. We'll have him on for about an hour and a half uninterrupted. All right, so a lot to get to with him, and most of it's football. All right, so fantasy stuff, future props, and we'll come up with a game ticket as well. We're going to find 6 touchdown scorers that he likes. We'll find 7 of them, and then we'll see what kind of payout we can get with Del Grande. In fact, we're going to do a real good evaluation of all kinds of players from his perspective today on fantasy football. Okay, so the college football games this weekend, the one that I would be most interested in is the obvious one, I would think anyway, is Notre Dame and Navy, even though it's a big point spread. The game is in London. Could get some, in I think Ireland, right? 2:30 start. Over under 49.5, and the total is 20.5. Sam Hartman, of course, the quarterback from Wake Forest, who has transferred over to Notre Dame. So interesting game here. The little birdie I like to mess with. He says that he really loves the over in this game, and I could see that as well myself. So just for an example, if you wanted to try to do something crazy, 49.5. Say it's the final score of 42-24. So you get something super over. Notre Dame rolls. Navy still gets some of their own points. Well, you can still move some lines around in college football, and just to break 60.5 points, 61, which isn't unheard of in a college game by any stretch. Especially maybe this one is plus 340. Hartman could have a big day. He really, really could. I could see Notre Dame scoring close to 50 maybe against the Navy defense, and Navy still getting a few of their points as well. But plus 340, even though they do the run, the option runs out, you run out the clock more. The clock now doesn't stop on first downs. You have that as well. And, of course, there's always a different variance. Just it depends on the officiating crew, how fast they'll restart the clock after it goes out of bounds. So it's really a huge wild card. You just kind of plan for the worst. I remember back in the day betting unders, and you sit there and just get all the way down to 2 seconds, 1 second on the play clock, run the ball. Okay, all right, slow to mark the ball, slow to move the chains. Let's take a while to reset the clock, and that was always something going on as far as a different kind of number you would get. And sometimes you just knew you were in business, like right off the bat, like, oh man, it's taking forever to get play going again. So a little bit different this year with the clock not stopping during first downs. So you would think that favors the unders. Apparently the bookmakers are onto it too, but I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. A lot of these teams have sped themselves up now to compensate. You're always trying to move fast, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to see the points scored on the average, since technically we're supposed to have less plays, but we'll see. Less plays because you don't have the clock stopping and all that. But I'm going to say this is going to go over. And Notre Dame could get close to this themselves, to be honest. So can Navy get 14 points? Maybe not. Maybe this is a 35-0 game. But I'm going to trust Navy to get at least something and get over the total here. Other games this weekend: UTEP and Jacksonville State. I don't care about that. UMass, New Mexico State. You would think they would have just a few more marquee matchups on the week 0 games. I mean, give us a LSU against Virginia Tech or something at least, something weird like that. Put one of the big boys on, like Michigan. I think USC is actually playing. Yeah, so they play San Jose State at night. Vanderbilt in Hawaii. Ohio is at San Diego State. Louisiana Tech and Florida International is the last game on the board. So USC, they were a 30.5-point favorite over San Jose State, a total of 66.5. Vanderbilt destroyed Hawaii last year, minus 17.5 for them, over under 55. San Diego State less than the field goal, and over under 48.5 seems kind of high for me. San Diego State is usually an under team. You got to remember too, like this is the very first game. These guys haven't even had scrimmages against other teams. They've been playing themselves. So there is a path to have sloppy play. You'll just trust a quarterback like Hartman for Notre Dame to be able to put up points since he is experienced. So he'll be the exception. But, I can almost make a case for the under of all these games, to be honest. And now, is San Jose State really going to score against USC? Probably not much if they do. So 66.5 or an over-under there. I could see USC winning that game, 49-6 or something, right? 55 points. So maybe an under on that USC. We'll take a look at on the alternate as well. Just on a hunch here, especially in a blowout, you call off the dogs, play some backups, et cetera, et cetera. It's the first game. So just trying to get the 66.5 is kind of hard. Under 56.5 is plus 260. Under 54.5 plus 340. You could talk me into that under 54.5 of plus 340, I think. Literally, USC scores 45 points and San Jose State gets their 6 or whatever it is. And there you go. You're still going to be under at a good number. All right, on the baseball slate for tonight, let's look at that. So week 0 football, give us a little bit better matchup, people, please. On the baseball slate, and we do have some games that have gone final. So let's get on that. And a game or two in progress as well for the Thursday slate. All right, this afternoon, the longest game of the season, which was suspended last night and then even rain delayed at some point today, finally ended with the Dodgers beating the Guardians 6-1 in Cleveland. Just 4 hits for Cleveland on the day. Other final scores: Nationals take a late lead over the Yankees. So the Yankees, even after the Aaron Judge's 3 home runs last night and the homers again today, is not enough as they blow it with their bullpen. 6-5, Nats win. The Rays win 5-3, and the Red Sox currently up 11-1. Now, I had a ticket today on Red Sox win margin by 4, which was great, and the Rays to win straight up and over 8.5 runs. So they got 8 runs. So that ticket's a loser, except for the fact that I just didn't have a good feeling about it. I didn't get the best cash out in the world. They were down to 3-3. So I was kind of, kicking myself at the moment. I'm like, we're kind of close to extra innings. This was in the 7th inning, by the way. They didn't score in the 7th. And once we got to the top of the 8th, I figured if the Rays could just score and the Rockies don't, then this game's over with. 4-3 or 5-3 would be my win. Really, I was hoping for it to be 4-4 by that point, so I'd be locked in and just hope the Rays pull it out later. So I got offered triple the cash out, and I went ahead and actually did it. So I took the triple cash out option, and they never got over 8.5. So I feel like I bucked the system there, got a win anyway when I shouldn't have. I still got paid 3-1 odds on my money. And, that's that really. I guess it was 2-1 odds. Is it 3-1 odds on my money is what I got? No, I got 3-1. Okay. So, not going over 8.5, my original ticket bet stuck at 8 somehow pays off for me. And, we'll move forward to the evening slate. We'll do the matchups with the pitchers first, and then we'll go over the odds and recap it since we only have let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll do it as we usually do. Okay, Cleveland, it looks like the rain is going to be moved out. Game 2 of this doubleheader. Caleb Ferguson, 7-3 for the Dodgers against Gavin Williams, 1-4 for the Guardians. Both pitchers have really good ERAs, 2.87 for Ferguson. Williams is 3.02. And this game should be getting underway soon. They both only given up 48 hits. They have more strikeouts than innings pitched. So they're pretty good in that regard. And not a ton of home runs either by either pitcher. So this should be a lower scoring game, right? But I'm going to just trust the Dodgers to outslug the Guardians in this game. Minus 126 plus 108. Over under is 9. I think that's just a cheap number for the Dodgers because you're going to be able to get a good price here on some stuff. Let's see what minus 2.5 over 6.5 is if they offer it. They're not. They're giving us 7.5, 8.5. So minus 2.5 over 8.5, which would be a 6-3 game. Can Cleveland score 3 runs though? Really? I mean, can the Dodgers even score 6 against this pitcher? Good pitcher. Is plus 360. Maybe a way to do this would be Dodgers minus 1.5 and under 10.5. Let's see. Is that an option here? You always want to make the half numbers make sense with the total number. Yeah, Dodgers minus 1.5 and under 10.5 is plus 270. I don't know about that. I'm just going to look for the bats to be a little bit better than Cleveland. And for the Dodgers to win by 4 runs is 3-1 odds. So we'll take that. They won the last game 6-1. I think it's somewhat similar to this game, to be honest. Even 5-1 gets you there, 5-0. But Cleveland doesn't have any offense, so we'll look to stay with a red-hot Dodger team. The Cubs with the steal on the mound against the Pirates, to be determined. Let's see if there's a pitcher matchup on this site yet. Sometimes we have it. Cloudy and 81 in Pittsburgh, so weather shouldn't be an issue, and we still are undecided. So Steele, who's 14-3, 2.80 ERA, this looks like a layup for the Cubs, and I would say that probably is. This is going to end up being somewhat of a bullpen game, probably for the Pirates. The Cubs are a hot team. The Pirates are not, so I think you can lean with the Cubs here. This is a 7 o'clock start. They're just minus 168. I mean, that's probably fine as well. Can they win by 4 runs? Plus 220 is that number. The alternate run line for minus 1.5 is just minus 106, plus 148 for minus 2.5. Yeah, I would still take it all the way up to 4, to be honest. And if we do a line total parlay, maybe the Cubs bats do stay hot because they have been hot. You can probably do the minus 2.5 over 8.5, which is 6-3. Again, that's plus 270. So pick your poison, either that or the win margin by 4. I think it's safer just to do the 4, to be honest. It's almost like a trend today as well. And the team we like to win by 4 with the Tampa Bay ticket was the Red Sox, up 11-1 again. So, I mean, it doesn't take much. You know, they're up 10 runs. 4 sounds like a lot, but this time of the year when you're playing against a bad team, you can really put it on them and so forth. Now, Toronto is a decent team, good pitching, but they have been completely foiled by the Orioles. The Orioles have beaten them now 9 out of 12 times. They are even money tonight again. Barrios against Kyle Gibson. Both are minus 108. Over under is 9. Again, I think you just take the Orioles. I was kind of trying to pull the trigger back because the Toronto Blue Jays seem to be getting a little hot here lately. But they have faded again. The Orioles minus 2.5 is plus 300. Minus 3.5 is plus 430. So you're getting good numbers all the way around there. And if you do the win margin, let's see if you get paid more on the win margin. Orioles plus 420 to win by 4 or more. So that's the same thing as minus 3.5. And the minus 3.5 is, again, Well, now plus 430. So that's better than the win margin plus 420. Okay, so that's what you go ahead and do is you take the run line there minus 3.5. But again, I think you just kind of take the risk and bite the bullet and hope for a lot of success at home. Blue Jay bats go cold. The Orioles are good at home. They are one of the better teams in baseball, and they were 9-3 against the Blue Jays. And again, probably disrespected by the number, which they have been all year. So good betting line, even at minus 108 if you want to do it that way. All right, the Rangers are at Lopez and the Twins. You got Haney and Lopez. Lopez has been a decent pitcher for Minnesota. We just have 2 games left after this. 87 and sunny skies. 9-6 for Lopez, 3.51 ERA. Haney is about the same, but with a 9-6 record, 4.27 ERA. A lot more innings pitched for Lopez, 153. Both have given up less hits than innings pitched. And 187 Ks for Pablo Lopez. Look at that. So he is really striking out a lot of batters. 17 home runs, though, given up by him. And Haney has given up 19. So this reeks of an underplay. At the end of the day, it'll be a stay away. But if you just want him to go for the theme, then, take either one of these teams to blow out the other. But I don't think so. This is probably a 2-1, 3-2 type of game here. The Ranger bats have been quiet. Minnesota can definitely go through their spurts of not scoring as well. Although against the Brewers, they had a ton of points or runs yesterday or in the series. I was thinking it was going to be more of an under series with the Brewers and Twins, but they managed to get a lot of runs, and that's just the way baseball works. All right, just a combined 42 wins in this scenario, away for Oakland, home for the White Sox. So 26 wins at home to 35 losses for the White Sox, and the A's are 16-46 on the road, 96 degrees in Chicago. So it is hot. We have Ken Waldichuk, 2-7, 5.91 ERA against Jesse Schultens, 1-6 overall, 3.79 ERA. No, neither one of these pitchers blows your mind in any category, except Waldichuk is probably one of the worst pitchers in the league, just from the ERA record, innings pitched to hits, to home runs given up as well. A lot of walks. So do we get runs with these two somewhat inept offenses as well? Maybe. I mean, this is just a stink game. Why do you even want to touch it? The over-under is 10 runs. The White Sox minus 142. So that is just all crazy to me. They're expecting this game to go over. You know what? I think you just try to trust the White Sox at home. And you dumb down that over-under number. You got to figure they're going to get to 7 or 8 between them with the pitchers anyway. Let's see if we can get something totally cheap here. White Sox, they want to give me 7.5. I mean, I don't know. Can you buy 8.5 with this high over-under? I don't know. But the White Sox minus 2.5 over 8.5 is a plus 330. I think this is just a pass. We're going to have to get off of this game. I mean, the A's could definitely win this one and win it convincingly because that's how bad the White Sox are. All right, we should have a tight game in Arizona. Arizona, the Diamondbacks, and Cincinnati, the Reds. Williamson and Kelly on the mound for them. So let's get the breakdown here on Merrill Kelly. Against Brandon Williamson. Kelly is 10-5, 3.13 ERA. Williamson, the lefty, 4-3, 4.47 ERA. Both give up less hits than innings pitched. Kelly is really good with the strikeouts. He does have 50 walks. He has 49, but, basically 50. And 32 walks for Williamson in his 86 innings. They don't walk a ton, but they walk a few. 17 home runs given up by Kelly and 14 by Williamson. I think this is just a close game. The Diamondbacks are priced really high here, minus 178. So Williamson is not that bad here at plus 150. The Reds looked very good in Anaheim playing the Angels. So can they carry that over tonight? They might be able to, and you're getting a good price. So I'm not going to fault you if you want to try to fade Kelly and the Diamondback team, who's been actually pretty hot lately, but they could turn cold for a night for sure against the Reds. Interesting game there in Arizona. You know, the Reds to win by 2 runs. Let's see what that number is, because that would kind of interest me on a little reverse run line. I think we're going to get a good number there. They are the home team, so they get the away at bat that helps you out in that scenario. But plus 255, minus 1.5 for the Reds, and 400 for minus 2.5. And if you think that they can smoke the D-backs, which they might be able to be honest, plus 600. So a good number there. So I think there's some blowout weird opportunities tonight. You know, this game in Arizona could be a closer one for sure. But with the Dodgers and the Orioles, I mean, I think you have a chance there for sure. Cubs as well at Pittsburgh. You figure Texas Twins are closer. Athletics, White Sox, you can't trust it. And maybe the Reds. Maybe you can get a good number. You are getting a great number on the Reds if you want to take the risk. I mean, I think it's more of a toss-up game to me than plus 150, minus 178. So if you think you can get a triple blowout, you might as well go ahead and think that way. NFL, as well, 2 games tonight. I'm going to take the Steelers. I think they have a better quarterback scenario going on here. With the backups. I think you might even see the starters as well tonight. They are laying a big number, minus 6, but you're going to get 2-1 odds if they can win by 2 touchdowns or more. So I'm going to just roll the dice with that. Atlanta's going to pack it in for tonight. Better situation for the quarterbacks for the Steelers. And we'll just kind of go that way. And then we'll lay off the Colts minus 4.5 at Philly. So the Colts minus 4.5, a road favorite at Philadelphia. I don't get that over under 37. We'll pass on that. But if you want to get really frisky and just kind of take the underdog and say that they're going to blow them out, which happens at times, then you can get Philly Eagles plus 700 to win by 2 touchdowns or more. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back with Dave Grande. We have a lot to go over with the NFL, a lot of good numbers I want to throw at him, fantasy, future props, and I'll touch on a couple things. Of course, Shohei Ohtani with the UCL injury to his elbow. So we'll see how that might impact him. He is out there in California, and they had a little storm as well. Was there any kind of crazy fallout from Hillary? It doesn't sound like much, a little bit of damage, but they did play a football game as well with the Saints and the Chargers. So a few people up in arms, or is that a whole lot to do about nothing? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a quick break. Baseball picks for tonight. Go ahead and take the Orioles. Go ahead and take the Dodgers, and that's a game coming up here shortly. We'll take a stab on the Reds. We'll take a stab on the Rangers as well, just because they're kind of due for a win. And Minnesota can definitely go quietly in the night with their bats. Okay, Dave Grande coming up shortly after this. Give us a couple minutes to regroup. We'll be back in a minute. This is the Round Robin on the Deep End Broadcasting Network. Family-owned and operated, CP Shuckers Cafe and Raw Bar specializes in delicious cuisine, refreshing drinks, and a laid-back atmosphere. We opened our doors in 1995 and have enjoyed being a place to either relax or celebrate ever since. Whether you are in the mood to indulge in a great meal with your friends and family or watch the game, we promise that our inventive menu, attentive service, and skilled bartenders will have you truly satisfied. Both of our locations have spacious outdoor patios for enjoying the breeze and catching a little sun. Our friendly staff at CP Shuckers will make your next dining experience a pleasant one by delivering personal care. We are open until 2 a.m. Full menu will be served until 10 p.m. and late night limited menu until 1 a.m. For larger parties, please give the location of choice a call. Pacific Avenue, 757-425-8676 or Shore Drive, 757-412-2929. More information at cpshuckers.com. Thank you for your continued support and have a shucking good time.
Hey, does your home have algae or stains on the siding? Is there grime built up on your deck or brick patio? Coastal Pressure Washing Services has a warranty of professional services. From pressure washing to window cleaning to deck and fence staining, as well as dryer vent cleaning, you got it all. Call Coastal Pressure Washing at area code 757-439-9810 or visit our website at coastalpressurewashing.net. Again, call Coastal Pressure Washing at area code 757-439-9810 or visit our website at coastalpressurewashing.net.
Dependable Solutions can provide all voiceover services for your advanced audio production needs. Think of us as an inexpensive option, no matter what the size of the project is. From one-word cameos to full script productions, contact Dependable Solutions at 757-354-5517. Do you want to advertise with Deep End Broadcasting? Send us an email at deepend757@yahoo.com. That's deepend757@yahoo.com.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
It is estimated that 23% of car accidents each year involve a cell phone. That's 1.3 million accidents a year. Reaching for your phone, you are 4 times more likely to crash. Dialing on your phone, 2.8 times more likely to crash. And texting on your phone, you are 23 times more likely to crash. Attentive drivers are safe drivers.
Know your gambling limits. Don't ever bet what you can't cover. Wagering on sports is only fun when you do it the right way. Not every bet will win. When you get on a bad run, know it and avoid trouble. Know your gambling limits.
Control your alcohol. Don't fight. Don't drink and drive. Your one punch could kill someone. It happens. If you're behind the wheel, you may think you are fine, but then the other driver is under the influence of texting, and then you are done. Control your alcohol.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
From the San Francisco Bay Area, Castro Valley, California, he is a columnist at Field Level Media, the senior analyst at Stat Factor, and the founder of Mr. Fantasy. He comes on with us every week during the season on Sunday mornings and joining us all of preseason to talk about a variety of headlines so far, some unexpected banter along the way that's been fascinating, and of course NFL and fantasy football, because we are right there. So on the line now with us from Castro Valley, California, Dave Del Grande. Hey Dave, what's going on, man? Out there in California, you guys just had the tropical storm come through. What's the after effects of all that? Hillary, I believe, was the name. And one other thing, too, they still managed to play a football game on Sunday night Some people up in arms about it. I don't know. You're kind of close to the action. Give me your take on that.
Well, I don't mean to belittle anything, but I think the total amount of damage done in Northern California, where I live, is about, I don't know, 9 or 10 leaves fell off the tree. In Southern California, it was a completely different thing. Obviously, California is a big state. So you're talking about a tropical storm hitting Florida and asking someone in Virginia, how were they impacted? Well, obviously, they were impacted at some point, a lot of times. But in this case, it might as well have been Florida and Virginia, because we didn't see any of this.
Okay.
And in fact, Southern California, fortunately for them, didn't see very much of it either. I mean, this went from this is going to be the first hurricane in 150 years in San Diego and Los Angeles, to, before it even got there, was downgraded to tropical storm. And all these people that were evacuating, they decided, how bad can a tropical storm be? And in fact, by the time the tropical storm hit, it wasn't even a real doozy like you guys have.
Right.
It was just a heavy rain and a little bit of wind, there was some damage here and there, but I would say for the most part, the people down there were very lucky not to have experienced that. As much as you'd like to say, "Ooh, I was in a hurricane," probably
right.
You know better than me, but probably watch what you're wishing for. So I think that all worked. I have a brother who lives in Carlsbad, which is just north of San Diego, and of course, he was very concerned, and I was texting with him, and the most I ever got from him is, "Oh yes, the wind is picking up, and when it's raining." All right, that's everybody can live with that, or most people can anyway. So, and then in terms of the football games, I mean, obviously they took some precautions with baseball. With the outdoor events, they moved Sunday's games to Saturday. They made double headers, and that was a good move. But in terms of the Sunday night game, indoor game, I think in retrospect, it did not need to be moved. I mean, I understand being cautious and you don't know, and had it been the other way around and the storm was worse than thought, then it would have gone down as one of the dumbest decisions ever. And, when in doubt, you try to avoid that eventuality. But in this case, the weather people got it right. And nobody got wet.
Okay, 10-4. So a whole lot to do about nothing, a few fallen rocks. We'll move on and talk about other things. California, though. This is new news today. Otani, UCL injury, right? In his elbow. So he's going to be out sometime. He's probably not even going to pitch again until he's the age of 31, I think he'll be, when he comes back. But what kind of financial impact may this have for him? I think the real losers may be the fans, for sure, who want to watch this athlete perform. He's a lot of fun to watch, hits home runs, pitches well. And then 3, maybe. I mean, are the Angels just some doomed organization overall? And why would any free agent or anyone, I mean, with all the trades, even they've gone down into the tank for the most part since the All-Star break, trade deadline, nothing's worked out, injuries, Trout's in and out. If you're a free agent, why would you ever be attracted to going there at all with this reputation that they just continuously seem to have?
Well, to me, a big part of it is comparing the difference between Trout and Harper. In a sense, they're very, very similar. They're kind of, generational talents who not only hit for power, but hit for a decent average and have, good speed, are good outfielders. For the most part, obviously, Harper's not playing the outfield this year. But it's just, top 5 major league talents. Now, in the NBA, we've seen in recent years that these kinds of guys become magnets for other players. And it certainly was the case in Philadelphia with Harper. I mean, it seems to me one of the first things he did when he went there was give the team a shopping list of his friends. Well, Castellanos, he's one of my friends, and Turner, I like him, and And I mean, just, 4 or 5 guys, and they went out and they acquired 2 or 3 of them, and all of a sudden, what's his name, the leadoff hitter,
Schwarber.
Schwarber, and so they brought it. You look at their lineup, with Schwarber and Turner and Harper and Castellanos, and then it gets down to their, they got some good young talent there. I mean, wow, that's
the catcher can hit too. The catcher's good.
It's right. It's right. Exactly. But he's been there a while now.
Yep.
And so it's an indication that, kind of like LeBron, we've seen LeBron do, we've seen kind of a lot of NBA players do in recent years. These guys don't have to be one-man show. They can bring in their friends and really elevate the franchise. And that's part of why you're paying them all the money. Trout hasn't been able to do that. I don't know why. He seems to be a nice guy. You obviously you see him at the Eagles games. He's friendly. He seems to have friends. But the guys the Angels have brought in, I mean, they're not tied to Trout at all. I mean, they're guys who have, you've seen the teams with a lot of money to spend I'd say 10, 15 years ago when the Yankees, the Dodgers, they still are, but when they were dominating the sport in terms of money spent, even the Red Sox, they just went out and, well, who's the highest priced guy on the market? Okay, let's bring him in. Yeah, I know he doesn't really fit our team, but he's a good player, and we'll find a spot for him. And a lot of times this backfired on teams. Now we're seeing, this is what's happening with the Angels. I just think a lot of the decisions that players that they've been bringing in are bad choices. I don't think it's, because they, because they don't have, options. I just think they've made bad choices, and maybe, it's the GM, the ownership of the team, that's really got them going in the wrong direction. Maybe they need to do what the Phillies have done and just go to Trout and say, hey, look, give me a list of 5 guys, make some phone calls, go out there, find me 5 guys, we'll try to bring them in. We'll try to see if we can save this then, because clearly money is not really a factor there. With Ohtani, that's different. He probably doesn't have 5 friends in Major League Baseball. He can give you 5 guys from Japan to bring over, and maybe that wouldn't be a terrible thing, given how, some of these guys, including the guy from the Red Sox this year, have come over and done really well. But that to me is the biggest problem with the Angels, is they haven't, Trout hasn't been the magnet that Harper's been.
How about the Ohtani injury? What's the lingering effects for him financially, maybe?
I mean, any other pitcher, you would say, his value just got cut in half, or at least by 25%. But this isn't a pitcher. This is a guy who's hit 44 homers, and if he never pitches again in his career, how far removed is he, if he is at all, from Aaron Judge? I mean, this is a guy who, if he played full time in the field or DH or whatever and never pitched again, you're talking about a 50 home run guy for, the next 5, 6 years. I mean, so, if Judge couldn't go out there and get, $400 million, I don't see why that would stop Ohtani from getting that kind of money. But what's made him different, obviously, is the fact that he pitches as well. Now, these injuries, I don't want to say are a dime a dozen, but you see them, how many guys who are pitching right now in Major League Baseball have had this injury? I mean, upwards of 20, upwards closer to 50 maybe. And Tommy John surgery, it's just, it just seems that, like John Means there for the Orioles,
the damaged goods just aren't what they used to be now.
Yeah, right. And when a guy has Tommy John surgery and then has like a setback, that's where the news is. It's the news isn't anymore that he had Tommy John and what a great comeback. No, everybody's coming back from Tommy John. It's like I said, with me, like, where the heck is this guy? Everybody else has Tommy John surgery and they're pitching in 6 months. This guy's been out a full year now, and he's set, and now apparently he's about ready to come back, and that's great. But my point is that it's when the guy doesn't come back that becomes news. So I was thinking, who knows, looking forward, will Ohtani ever pitch again? What have you? Well, you would say with 95% certainty, I would think that sure, he'll pitch again if he wants to pitch again, and if his new team, presuming it is a new team, wants him to pitch again. Because like I said, he doesn't have to pitch in order to be, the best player, the marquee player, on, 27 or 28 teams in the league.
Okay, so he's going to cash big time at the end of the day. He's not going to have to worry about a nickel. Okay,
I
cool.
wouldn't think so. I mean, I don't see,
Right.
And what's funny about this is that this could end up helping the Angels in some way, because he to some people he will become less of a player. Like, we'd like Ohtani,
Right.
but we're not going to pay him Aaron Judge money just to be a DH. And so if that takes 2 or 3 teams out of the equation, and already we're starting with a very short list of teams that can pay that kind of money,
Right.
then all of a sudden, here are the Angels who have been very nice to him. And in fact, they're basically telling him right now, hey, look, we got no chance to make the playoffs without you pitching. But you know what? You're our number one priority. Even though you haven't re-signed with us, you may not be coming back next year. That's all fine. We still care about you. And we're if you want to sit out the rest of the season and not hit anymore, that's fine with us too. It's your call. It's all about you. And that's got to make him feel good. That's got to make him, at least in some small way, have second thoughts about leaving the organization that's been so nice to him. I'm not saying he's coming back, but if the chances of him coming back were 20% before the injury, I think they went to 22% because of the injury.
Okay, good stuff. All right, to the NFL, and I got a lot of fun numbers to go over. I got them all lined up right here in front of me. But we've had 2 weeks of the preseason. Are there maybe 2 or 3 players that you kind of said, stock up a little bit in your mind? I can grab this guy a couple rounds higher than what maybe he's going for on the average. Do you have any secret intel strategy-wise going in that you can kind of share with us?
Well, I would say that, advice that I would give to any fantasy player, whether you're in your 100th league or whether you're in your first league, because there are so many different venues for playing, so many different sizes of leagues, the rules are different, et cetera, et cetera. Priority one, number one thing on your list of things that you have to do when entering a fantasy football league is understand the rules. And not only that, but don't join a league where there's something about it that you don't like. In other words, I don't like 12-team leagues or 14-team leagues. I mean, anything higher than 10. To me, fantasy football is about rooting for star players. I don't want to be in a 14-team league where my 8th-round pick is some third-string running back and I'm rooting for 2 injuries. That's no fun to me.
Right,
now,
right.
that's just me. Now, the point is that, all these leagues are different. I mean, if you're like me and you want to draft star players and have fun rooting for these guys, then join a 10-team league. And then the scoring system in these leagues. This league's got they play 5 wide receivers and super flex and no. Keep it simple. You don't need to have a guy in every single NFL game, on your fantasy team. The basic concept of fantasy, the 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, a tight end, a defense, and a kicker. That's enough. And it allows you to get, like I said, big name guys for the most part and most of your starting positions. and makes it fun. And now, if you're the other way around, you don't agree with me there, that's fine. Then join a league that has super flex. I watched the draft on TV, one of Matthew Berry's things the other night, and it was a super flex league that had 2 flexes, and I was like, I had no idea, what in the world they were talking about, because it's like, okay, well, what does super flex mean? Is it always the same thing? And all they did was explain, well, in super flex leagues, it really raises the value of quarterbacks. And Barry went on to say that, this is the way fantasy football should be, because quarterbacks are the most important players on the football field. They should be the most important players in fantasy. There you're preaching to the choir. In the old time fantasy football leagues, quarterbacks were the first guys drafted, and rightfully so. Now, unfortunately, they were overpriced. They were overvalued. And so, when ESPN, when some of these big companies came in and started fiddling with the rules of fantasy, they immediately watered down the quarterback position. So instead of getting 6 points per touchdown pass, you started getting 4, in some leagues 3. And it really killed the value of the quarterbacks and made, running backs became the number 1 position. Well, of course, now it's almost like wide receivers become the number 1 position. But quarterback is still the most important position in the NFL. How do you fix that in fantasy? Raise their point value. Go back, give them 5 points per touchdown pass. Heck, go back to 6 if you want. So what? The quarterbacks are the highest scoring guys in fantasy. They should be, right? And so anyway, my point is, find the type of league that you're most comfortable in, which to me, like I said, is the very basic type of league.
Right,
don't
standard plain Jane. Okay, yep.
Yeah, don't get caught up in, there's this new league, this super flex, 9 flex positions, 10 running backs. No. And I'd say the same thing about, again, I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm just trying to tell them that there are options out there, and because there are options, there's no reason to join a league where you're not going to like it. One of these other things is, think about it before you do it. In other words, don't join a second league until you really understand what joining a second league means. In other words, to me, one of the worst things in fantasy is, well, I've got Patrick Mahomes, going for my team this week. Of course, I've been rooting for him all season. This is great. Oh, I love Patrick Mahomes. Oh my God, this week I'm going against the team that has, Kelsey. Right. Yeah. But the good news, I'm in another league where I got Kelsey. So now if Kelsey does good, it helps my other team. But if he does bad, it hurts this team I'm playing against. And it's like, well, what are you rooting for? You're rooting for him to do good. You're rooting for him to do bad. It's like,
I found myself in that predicament with bets for sure in the past.
Yeah,
just like different from even fantasy, just having a bet on the game.
Yeah, right. And so, right. And this, this is part of this as well is, one of the negatives, probably the biggest negative that fantasy's had over the years is you become less of a hometown fan. In other words, if Travis Kelce's my tight end and the 49ers are my favorite team and the Chiefs are playing the 49ers, well, what am I rooting for? Am I rooting for Kelce to do good, which is going to come at the detriment of, my favorite team? Or am I rooting for my favorite team to win this game? And of course, you have to shut down Kelce to do that. That is always going to be a problem in fantasy. And maybe, that is avoidable. But anyway, my point is, we've kind of gotten off on a tangent here, which I'm good at. There are so many good options out there in fantasy. Don't think you have to sample them all. Find one where you think you're going to be most comfortable. Oh, that league I was in last year, man, that was great. Never been in an 8-team league before. Man, I had, all pros at every position. Okay, go find another 8-team league. And so don't just join. Your friend calls you and says, "Hey, I'm in this new league this year, 14 teams, super flex. Oh, this is really great." Like, no. I liked last year's league, and so that's that's the first piece of advice that I would give to anybody playing fantasy this year. Now, let's get back to the question, which was, what have we learned these last couple of weeks? And I think that, what I've learned in studying, a lot of these drafts that have been happening is, I'm very concerned about, am I going to be able to get Kelsey in the first round? This is a big. I really want him on my team.
Average starting draft position number 5 right now.
Right, exactly. And so, in order to get him, you land at number 5, you're probably going to get him. You land at number 6, you might get him. You land at number 7 or later, you're probably not going to get him. And if you land at 4 or earlier, well, of course you can get him, but is that too high? And so, what you need to do is, again, this is one of the great things about fantasy in recent years. You see all of these, like ESPN's, experts got together with in a 10-team draft recently, and it was great. Not because they all made great choices, but you kind of got to get a real good idea of where guys are going to be drafted, and because like in most leagues, you don't know where you're going to draft until minutes before the draft. So you've got to be ready to go in different directions. And so I've looked at, what if I draft second? What am I going to do there? Would I have any interest in taking Kelsey that high? Well, that's sure, I think about it, but I don't think anybody else would do that. I mean, that just seems to be too high. All right, so what do? Do you take a wide receiver, or do you take a running back? And then you can look at these drafts and say, okay, let's say that Jefferson was picked first and I picked second, and I take Tyreek Hill. Okay, now what am I going to get in round 2? And you look at these drafts and you see, oh man, there's been a run on wide receivers. We've gotten down to the second tier wide receivers. Thank goodness I took one in the first round, as opposed to if I had taken McCaffrey or Eckler maybe in the first round. And now you say, well, I'll come back and get a wide receiver in the second round. Well, there's a list of about 8 or 9 or 10 of them even maybe that I really like. They could all be gone by the 19th pick. And I don't want to be in that situation. I mean, wide receivers are going to win or lose fantasy championships this year for you. I say, and if you don't have a star wide receiver, you're lagging behind in the most important category. So, even though, I'd like to take McCaffrey or Eckler, I think they're probably better at their position compared to the competition than, a Tyreek Hill or a Jamar Chase would be compared to their competition. But that said, it puts you in a spot where, your top wide receiver is going to be, probably someone from tier 2, Devontae Smith or Waddle or Olave, someone like that, or one of these, top guys who might have slipped that people don't like for whatever reason. Anyway, my point is, you can learn this by looking at drafts like this and seeing, what's going to happen if I pick this guy, what's going to happen if I pick this guy. And so I've come to the conclusion that, man, I don't want to pick high. Again, you have no choice, but man, that would not be good. And in leagues where, people get to choose their position, I would strongly advise against picking in the top 4. Then, then comes, of course, if I have a pick in the middle of the round, my hope is to get Kelsey there. Well, now what happens if I pick at the end of the round? What's going to happen? And again, you look at it, and I think at the end of the round it becomes a no-brainer, because at the end of the round you're going, the top two running backs, at least the top two, are going to be gone, and probably the top, maybe even 3 or 4, maybe 5. Depending upon where you pick, wide receivers are going to be gone. So what's that leave you with? And I still think that, well, there's this group of 10 wide receivers that you're telling me I can pick 9th and get 2 guys from this group at the most important position. Where do I sign up for that? Now, I didn't get Jefferson. I didn't get Chase.
I can have St. Brown and A.J. Brown or something like that.
Exactly. And that's,
Devontae Adams, if you want to go that way.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, even, Wilson, he's skyrocketing up.
Yep.
But I would say that the guy who I think is, undervalued, and you take this with a grain of salt because he's still considered to be a top 10, top 12 pick. But a guy who I'd have no problem taking late in the first round, even as early as maybe number 6 if Kelsey was gone, is A.J. Brown. I don't understand why he's, slipped some from last year. I mean, this guy was, for the most part, the fantasy MVP last year.
Right.
He and Hurts were probably co-winners. Maybe it's just because at the very end of the season, maybe in the championship game, because the Eagles were in a good position, he didn't have a good game there or whatever. But I take him. I mean, I consider taking him ahead of Chase. I mean, the only guys who I would definitely not take him ahead of would be Jefferson and Hill. And I, man, if he's sitting there if you're telling me I can draft 9th and I'm going to get A.J. Brown, like I said, as much as I'd like Kelsey, it may even be a better thing to draft 9th, draft Brown, and then still coming back, you still get one of these, you mentioned a lot of the names. One of these, I don't even want to call them lesser, star wide receivers, whether it's Diggs. I don't think Kupp's going to last that long, but it's possible. Lamb, St. Brown, who would be a great pick, at number 12. Wilson's going to be up there. Adams. You get A.J. Brown and, Adams as your first 2 picks in an era where wide receivers are dominating fantasy. It's going to be the equivalent of 10 years ago of drafting 2 great running backs right away. You're going to have such an advantage over most of the other teams that, after 2 picks, you become the league favorite. So, that's something that I'm focusing on in terms of the draft, is where do I want, not only where do I want to pick, you don't really have a choice of that in many leagues, but what happens if I land here? What happens if I land here? And what happens if I land here? And be prepared for all 3 of them, because the last thing you want in a fantasy draft is to, have a game plan, and then I'm going to draft Kelsey in the first round, and then poof, he's gone. And now what do you do? I don't have a plan B. I thought for sure he'd be available for me at number 5. He went number 4. Oh, now I'm screwed. Now what do I do? Well, tell you what you do. You've prepared for this. Now. Okay, you know what? I'm going to take A.J. Brown right now, and hope round 2 and come back and get me another good wide receiver, and then I'll go to my plan B in terms of tight ends. So that's basically what I'm focusing on. There's also, probably the biggest uncertainty in the draft this year revolves around, we talked about this a little last week, but it has grown significantly to a third guy, is what do you do with Dalvin Cook what do you do with, Ezekiel Elliott, and what do you do now, with, Taylor? Taylor becomes a huge wild card if you're drafting tonight. It's.
I mean, you hope he goes to Buffalo if you take him, right? I mean,
well, you hope. That's the thing. I mean, it's when do you take him? The way this appears to be playing out is he's going to get traded. Now, he's going to be going from the Colts, who are one of the worst teams in the league, who've just added a running quarterback who is going to steal touchdowns from whoever the running back is.
Right, yeah.
To who knows who. I mean, Miami is one of the teams that's talked about, him going to Miami.
They have a ton of running backs.
Well, they have a ton of running backs, but none are good, and they're always injured.
Right.
I mean, he goes into Miami, and it's like McCaffrey going to San Francisco. It's, wow, he becomes – I mean, you could argue that Taylor on Miami becomes a top 3 pick, maybe even top 2 pick, depending upon what you think of, Jefferson. And then I think he becomes the best running back. I think Miami's a high scoring team. They've certainly got a passing game where you've got to respect the passing game. And now you're adding, an elite, arguably the best running back in all of football. You're throwing him on there. Again, it's very similar to the 49ers adding McCaffrey. So this guy's a better touchdown scorer because he runs more than as opposed to McCaffrey, who catches more passes. So I think that Taylor is a big wild card in drafts, and by the time, if you're not drafting, which you shouldn't be until closer to the start of the regular season, you've got to decide for yourself, where are you going to rate this guy? And a lot of that's going to be on what team he ends up with. But something else we've talked about before, a lot of people draft off of, how many points guys scored last year. A lot of people draft off what they've read in a magazine. Heck, people might have printed out ESPN's latest top 100 list, and they're drafting off that. All of that's irrelevant once Taylor moves to a new team, because his value shoots way up. I think he's going to be vastly underrated even when he goes to a new team, because I just don't think there will have been enough time to accurately gauge what people think he's going to do. Very similar to Dalvin Cook. I'm shocked that the Dalvin Cook remains as lightly regarded as he is. There's no way Dalvin Cook should be rated below Breece Hall. And Dalvin Cook is an elite. This isn't Ezekiel Elliott. Dalvin Cook is an elite running back. Who's been an elite running back. For 5 years. Dalvin Cook rushed for 1,170 yards last year. Caught 39 passes for 2 more touchdowns. He's someone who's, I think, a top 10, running back in the NFL. And now he goes, and being in Minnesota was a good spot for him. Not that I don't want to say that, but now he goes to a team whose quarterback, we've seen this in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers throws the ball to the back more than any other quarterback. So this is a guy who, like I said, caught 39 passes last year. I think that he easily could be projectable to be over 50 this year. And so, what's the hesitation, with believing that Dalvin Cook is going to be a top 10 fantasy running back this year, and he's, that makes him a second or at worst a 3rd round pick, but he's going way later than that. He's going behind Hall in a lot of drafts, and I just don't get that. but like I said, it's an indication that
68th overall right now. So that's
right. But fantasy, it's what's the old saying? 50% of all people are below average intelligence, right? It's in fantasy. You've got a lot of people who know what they're doing, but way more people who don't know what they're doing. And that's just the way it's kind of like a presidential election. How many votes that are cast are actually intelligent votes? The point is that people are there's some people out there that like me who are looking ahead and wow, this guy's going to be the Jets' top running back. There's no doubt in my mind. Now maybe the first couple of weeks they ease him into it. We'll see. But I still got to believe that, here we go again with Aaron Rodgers. He's got this veteran, trustworthy, scores touchdowns inside the 10-yard line running back, and he's got this, not a rookie, but, second or third year guy, whatever Hall is now, coming off a knee surgery, may have fumbled the first time, Rodgers handed him the ball this spring. Rodgers never forgets that, it's like, well, who's he campaigning for in the lineup? And I just think that, you got someone as good as Cook, he's going to be in there. So I think, if you had Taylor and Cook as your starting running backs in fantasy this year, again, you didn't take them in the first and second round. Right? I'm not saying that. But you take Taylor in the second round, you take Cook in the fourth round, you mix in some really good wide receivers there. You've got yourself, the front runner to be your league champion. And so, that, and yet we learn so little in the preseason. Guys aren't playing. All the practices are secretive. They go to these controlled scrimmages against other teams. They don't even allow film. There's no media. It's we have no idea what's going on. When we tune in, it's Friday night or Thursday night or whatever it is. They've already had these controlled scrimmages, where everybody's been playing, and we've done a bunch of our real offense, and we go out there and we throw, we run the ball up the middle 35 times, and we throw, 35 down and outs. Wow, wasn't that exciting? Didn't we learn a lot watching the second stringers, battle each other? We learned nothing in the preseason, almost nothing. And so a lot of it has to be, our own intuition as to, well, gee, what do you think is going to happen here? And that's what makes fantasy fun. Things change from year to year. You can't assume that what happened last year is going to happen again this year. Sometimes you can. I look at the Eagles, but I don't see why Jalen Hurts isn't the number one quarterback again this year. I don't see why A.J. Brown isn't the top 3 wide receiver again this year. I'm not sure why either one of those things is going to happen. There's just, assuming everything is the same as it was last year is just not a wise thing to do.
Following up on all of that. So Dalvin Cook is 68th overall. He's the running back number 28. So here are the running backs 20. I'll count down from 27 to 20. And let's see who's ahead of him. Is that cool?
I'll sure. Go ahead.
All right. DeAndre Swift ahead of him. But ahead of him there,
okay,
26.
You give me a name, and I'm going to give you a 3-word comment.
All right, perfect. One of these guys. DeAndre Swift.
Backup running back. Backup on his own team.
All right, Rashad White. Okay.
I like him. The low-scoring team, but primary back. I would certainly take him as my number 2 running back.
Okay, James Conner.
Terrible team. I don't want a running back on a terrible team like that.
All right, excellent. All right, Alvin Kamara.
I like him. I think he's underrated. And again, it's out of sight, out of mind. Ooh, Alvin Kamara's on a suspension. I can't afford not to, him to miss all that time. He's going to be out 3 weeks. He didn't sprain his ankle in training camp, and he's out 3 weeks, and it might linger. No. He's on suspension. He's healthy. He's playing good. The Saints are an improved offensive team. I think he's underrated. He's definitely a number 2 fantasy running back.
All right, great. Javonte Williams, Denver.
I wouldn't mind him as my third back. I think he's consistent, but again, I don't think Denver's going to be a high-scoring team. Look at his numbers from last year. He was injured, what have you. That whole team, nobody did anything. I'm not so sure that's going to change this year. So, no, give me a better offensive team.
All right, Cam Akers.
Again, here we go. Worst team in the league. Cam Akers. He's their featured running back. Where have I heard this before? It happens for 2 weeks. He gets injured, and that was on a high-scoring team. Now we're on a terrible team, a low-scoring team. I have zero interest in him.
Alexander Madison.
Yeah, again, I'd take him as a third back. I think he's being drafted a little higher than that. I think he's got a chance to surprise this year. I think he could be a solid number 2 fantasy back.
All right, last one, J.K. Dobbins.
No, thank you. I mean, there's, the Ravens are, they're kind of like the 49ers before the 49ers had McCaffrey. Like, one guy plays 3 games, then he's hurt. The next guy plays 3 games. Oh, they brought in a veteran off the waiver wire. He plays the next 3 games. Oh, Dobbins is back. Get him off waiver wire. He's injured after 2 games. Just too much, ball spread around way too much around that backfield. Cumulatively, I think Baltimore could have a decent running game this year, but they also, there's the Jackson factor. He's going to steal 600 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns from the running backs. That's never a good thing. So, no thanks with him.
I'll do just the 1 or 2 more because Breece Hall is actually 25 picks ahead of him, and you said exactly that. Why is he up there? The guy in between, Miles Sanders.
Okay, here's a guy who benefited big time last year by playing on a team where the other team was more concerned about Hurts running the ball than they was about Sanders running the ball. They had a great passing game. This guy was just in an ideal situation last year, cashed in on it, and now goes to a terrible team and won't have a third of the success. I think he's going to be when all said and done, he's going to be, one of the worst picks of the year.
Okay. Highest scoring team in the NFL. I'm going to give you some numbers, and then you tell me what might pique your interest the most. You've already mentioned the one team that kind of gets me a little fired up on this number maybe. And they actually have a game against what I think will be another team which will produce a lot of points in week 1. But let me go down the list real quick. Chiefs are 5-1, Bills 7-1, Eagles 9-1, Cowboys 10-1, Lions 10-1, Bengals 11-1, Ravens 16-1, Chargers 16-1, Vikings 16-1, 49ers 16-1, Jets and Dolphins 20-1 each. I know you said it before that there probably should be a little bit better odds. These are kind of low in some cases, but highest scoring team, I would maybe take a stab at the Dolphins, like you said, and even the Chargers. I think at 16-1, maybe worth a shot.
Yeah, I mean, of all the teams you mentioned, the Chargers seem to be one that stood out in terms of, man, that seems awfully low. They get it. The Chargers games against Kansas City. I mean, what you've got to look at a lot here is you're playing 6 games in your division, and this is more than a third of your schedule. this is going to be a heavy impact on how many points you score. And you look at the division in the West, and well, Kansas City's in there. Kansas City's a good team. Yeah, but they're not a good defensive team. I mean, the Chargers, Kansas City games, the first 1 to 30 wins. And it's the same thing when the Chargers play the Raiders. Right. These games you jump into the 30s really quickly. Now, Denver is not that type of team. And so we'll have to see how that plays out. But when in general, I would say that's a high scoring division, which gives you a chance, to be a high scoring team. So I do like them. Obviously taking Miami would be speculative. I mean, if they get Taylor, those odds are going to be cut in half. So if you think that you get an inkling that that's where Taylor's going, then buy now, because they're going to be 10 to 1 once that happens. But I'd say the same thing about any team not any team, but most of these teams that get Taylor. Imagine Taylor went to Kansas City, and somehow, some way, Kansas City finds a way to get these guys. I don't really get it. Like they don't, they're one of these states that doesn't have income tax or something. They don't play by the same salary cap rules. But you throw Taylor on to Kansas City, they become Secretariat. They become the 4 to 5 favorite, and who's going to score the most points. And so that's, that I think is going to be it will be a factor in, in who becomes the highest scoring team, because like you talked about, even the teams at the top, Buffalo, how can you take, I know Buffalo's a really good offensive team, but how can you take Buffalo given the weather and given the division that they're in? I mean, Buffalo and New England, we talked about the Chiefs and Chargers, first 1 to 30. Buffalo and New England, you don't even have to score 20 to win that
right,
game. Right. The Jets will be a much more competitive team this year. You're not going to beat the Jets, 31-28. This is going to be a much more reasonable score than that. The Jets, are a pretty good defensive team.
Right.
And then Miami, again, another good team, not a team you're going to blow out. So, and you got 6 division games. None of them are going to be a blowout. One is, 2 of them, excuse me, they were against a very good defensive team in New England. And like I said, the Jets are probably rated right next to them. So, that to me is like, can I get a bet against those odds are way, way too low on Buffalo. I don't consider them to be in this group. But so many of those other teams, I can see it. I mean, I can see certainly Kansas City. Obviously, they're the favorite. I wouldn't take them because they're the favorite,
right,
because there are so many other teams out there that have a chance here. But it's I mean, I don't see a team in there where I would say, everybody's overlooking this team. But the Taylor situation could change that. Like I said, Miami wouldn't become the favorite, certainly, if they acquired Taylor, but their odds wouldn't be 20 to 1 anymore. And so, to get them at 20 to 1 when they really should be about 5 to 1 if they get Taylor, that would be like I said, you wouldn't necessarily have a ticket on the favorite, but you'd have the best price going anywhere.
Right. Your stock would be way up before it even started. Okay. This is a fun one. They have odds for 6 receiving touchdowns, 8 receiving touchdowns, and I'm going to eliminate the 10 and the 12 just for injury sake alone. I think if you get a couple week injury, these numbers are still achievable. But I'm going to name you a player, and I'm going to name you the price, and you kind of just tell me what you think. And I'll start at the bottom of the rung with this player just to score 6 touchdowns. All right? We'll see if we can build a ticket here. And I'm going to start with the longest shot and work my way up. And some of these numbers kind of are really surprising to me. But I'll start with Romeo Doubs, 6 touchdowns at plus 440.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd say no, just because we really don't know what to expect from the quarterback. People presume that this guy's going to step in there and nothing's going to have changed. But I think there's a very good chance, in his first season, that he won't be nearly as good as he eventually will be, and certainly not nearly as good as what the Packers have been getting. This is a team that's got elite running backs that they're going to rely upon. They throw a lot to their backs. They throw to their tight ends. They've got Christian Watson on the outside, who could be a real star. I have no interest in Dobbs.
Okay, Odell Beckham at plus 240.
Now this is interesting because he's a touchdown scorer. He's someone who you lob the ball to in the end zone, and he jumps up there with one hand and grabs it and hauls it in. I think he's got a chance to be a much better touchdown scorer than he is, bulk numbers receiver this year. I think we're going to see with him a lot of 3 catches, 28 yards, and a touchdown. And I think there's a very good chance that Baltimore is going to be a much improved passing team this year. And so I think Jackson's total touchdown total, is going to be high. And that being the case, I other than Andrews, I guess you would say, I don't really see someone there who's you say, wow, this guy's going to get 6, and this guy's going to get 6, and this, no. Other than Andrews, I mean, you got a bunch of guys who are going to get 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think Beckham. I think it's a very solid choice.
Okay, plus 600 for 8 touchdowns for him. So just 2 more gets you 8-1. Not too bad. Okay.
The difference between 6 and 8 is pretty big. 6 touchdowns,
right?
Basically 1 every 3 games. That's not that hard to achieve. I mean, you could miss a month with a hamstring injury and still get 6 touchdowns.
And put it this way too. In Justin Jefferson's 3 years, you wouldn't think so because he has nearly 5,000 yards receiving, but he only has 25 touchdowns, and he struggled to get to 8 last year. And trust me, we had him plenty for 2 touchdowns, and he would get tackled. He seems to get tackled at the 1-yard line more than anyone last year, Justin Jefferson. Okay. I'll make a case for this player came on pretty strong last year. He scored a decent amount. You're going to think Daniel Jones is going to throw the ball better as he matures a little bit anyway. But Isaiah Hodgins plus 195.
Wow. I think of the Giants, and to me, their number 1 receiver is now Waller. I mean, I think this changes a lot about what kind of a passing team the Giants are. They're not an elite passing team. I'd say they're probably below average, slightly below average. Now, Jones does a good job, but Jones also runs the ball a lot, and that lowers his touchdown total. I think Waller is someone who could score a lot of touchdowns this year, because I think that he's one of the top, one of the 2, 3, maybe 4 tight ends that you would look at and say, this is the number 1 target for this quarterback. So you got a below average passing team, and you got a tight end that's scoring 8 to 10 touchdowns. I'm going to pass on that.
Okay. Let's see here. Jerry Jeudy plus 130.
I think that Denver's going to be an improved passing team. You can't be worse, right?
Right.
And Wilson is such a wild card that if they can get him out of the pocket and scrambling around like he used to do in Seattle, not granted he was younger then, and then you end up throwing a lot more touchdown passes to your wide receivers who are kind of scrambling down the field. I think that Judy's going to be their top receiver. I think that it's, I wouldn't be surprised if he went over that total. But again, you're talking about a team that did they even have 6 touchdown passes last year?
Yeah.
And now you're telling me one of their guys is going to have to score 6 this year. If I had to say at 50-50, do I think Judy could score 6 touchdowns? Yes. But, it's 51-49.
Christian Kirk plus 125.
I'm not a big fan. I think he got into a real nice situation last year with a developing quarterback. But I still say when push came to shove that Ingram was, was their primary target. I think, I still think Ingram has a chance. He'd be on my list ahead of Kirk to score 6 touchdowns on this team. And now you throw Ridley in there. He'd be definitely be on my list to score more than 6 touchdowns. And I say this, Kirk and Zay Jones, they're like the same guy. I mean, they run deep patterns. They'll get you a couple of cheap ones because they run deep patterns. But I just don't see them as being guys when you have Ridley, when you have Ingram, you're first and goal at the 4, you play action fake. Kirk's probably not even on the field, and they're throwing to Ingram there. They're throwing to Ridley. So I would say definitely not.
Okay, so Ridley a minus 130. We'll put him on the list. Let's see. George,
we talked earlier about, what have we learned in fantasy over the last 2 or 3 weeks? And while we've learned nothing basically on the field, what we have learned in watching average draft positions and mock drafts and real drafts and what have you, is that people are starting to warm up to Ridley. And that's disappointing to me because I was hoping to get him maybe a round later than he's been going. He's really moved up into that second tier of wide receivers. Very, very strong, wide receiver 2 on your team. And so he's, I don't want to say I call him a sleeper going into the season, but I did consider him to be a guy who I thought was going to be underrated, who's now, maybe, fantasy football fans are smarter than I thought. He's now creeping up to the area where, okay, this is, they've pegged him right.
He's 36 overall right now, wide receiver 15, right ahead of Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and Amari Cooper.
Well, and there you go. I mean, with wide receivers and why you absolutely positively have to take a wide receiver as your flex. Those are all really good wideouts. I mean, really good. In the 30, I mean, these are not, 30-something wide receivers. The first 10 are wide receiver 1. They sound like top 10 are wide receiver 2, 20, next 10 are wide receiver 3. These are wide receiver 4s.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys aren't even supposed to be starting for you. I take any of them in my starting lineup. And so these guys, not all of them obviously, but some of them are going to be available to you in the 4th round, maybe even in the 5th round when you get down to drafting your 3rd wide receiver. And man, I jump on them way before I take a quarterback. So that, but still, I mean, again, the bottom line with Ridley, again, he was lower than this earlier in the year. He's creeping up. He's going to creep up into the 20s before draft day. And, like I said, that's too bad because I'd love to get him as my 3rd receiver. But, after drafting Kelsey in the 1st round, right? So I'm talking about getting him in the 4th round. I say getting him in the 4th round these days is not, you're rolling snake eyes there.
All right. George Pickens plus 125 for 6 touchdowns.
Okay. I think that, my biggest problem there with Pittsburgh is that they have a nice variety of guys who can score touchdowns. Obviously, they have a tight end that a lot of people like. They got Deontay Johnson, who's a volume pass catcher, and which is good for Pickens because it just means he's not going to see double teams necessarily. And then you got a running back, who's gets as many touches as anybody in football. And then they got a quarterback who's has the ability to scramble and maybe get some cheap touchdowns. So I think between the five of them, I would say, well, could they all score 5 touchdowns? I mean, I think that's very possible. Yeah. Which is the most likely to get 6? I mean, I think Pickens is the most talented, but my concern would be, as I said, the amount of times he's going to get an opportunity to score are going to be less than a lot of these other guys that we've talked about. So I would say yes. I'd say yes, he's going to do it, but again, probably with only about a 60% certainty rate.
He does have that height where they're going to try that little alley-oop play maybe a time or two when they get down there.
Right, but don't underestimate the number of times that quarterbacks are throwing to the tight end at the goal line these days, and even backs. And Pittsburgh, like I said, Pittsburgh with Freiermuth, he's got to be a top 5 or 6 tight end these days, and that's not good. I mean, obviously it just kills Kansas City's receivers because they throw to Kelsey all the time down there. We talked about Beckham. He's going to be fighting Andrews for the ball down there. Andrews is I really like Andrews. And I think, he's going to be Baltimore's top pass catcher, touchdown scorer for sure.
Minus 185, we'll throw him on there. Go ahead.
Waller, right, is another guy who's, to me, he's the Giants' top touchdown scorer. So before you start thinking about wide receivers on these teams, you got to think to yourself, they're not even the top target down by the goal line. And that's where obviously most of the touchdowns are scored. So that's something to always keep in mind when looking at these guys.
Okay, so there's a lot of wealth, obviously, with the 49ers as well to spread around. So would you rather maybe take Samuel or Kittle's for 6 or neither? Kittle's minus 110, Samuel plus 125. Or Ayuk is minus 110.
Yeah, I think are these receiving touchdowns or touchdowns?
Receiving touchdowns.
Okay. Because Samuel,
he'll do multi.
He's going to get running touchdowns, on reverses and what have you. So he get you a cheap couple, but that's not counting here.
Unless they do the inside shovel pass, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily one of their trademarks, but Kittle is the kind of guy that he's not these big. Power forward type of tight ends that are gonna, throw them, go to the goal line, turn around, post up your man, we'll throw it to you, fall down, touchdown kind of guy. But he is someone, probably the best tight end in the league, I would say, of finding wide open spaces in the defense and getting big chunks of yardage. And when you're getting big chunks of yardage and you're a tight end, you're one broken tackle away from going all the way. And that broken tackle is usually a guy who you outweigh by 50 pounds. And so I think that he's, to me, he's the most clever of the 49er receivers who, hey, just get open for me, and you tell that to all the 49er receivers. Kittle's going to be the guy who gets open the most often. So I think he's got the best chance among the 49er receivers, to get to the 6 touchdowns.
Okay. Chris Olave.
Well, I to me, he's kind of a no-brainer. He's first off, the competition there for targets is terrible. Yes, they have my favorite player,
Johnson?
Thomas.
Okay.
No, Thomas. I keep thinking, oh, gee, it was just 5 years ago when he caught 100 balls, and was the best receiver in the league. This is like his evil twin. That guy retired. Evil twin has come in here and has, plays one game and then is out for the rest of the season. And so the concern with the Saints is that, well, you got to have to share catches with Thomas. Yeah, right, for a game or two, right? And they have, like you said, Johnson's a nice pass catching tight end, but he's more of a Kittle type in terms of, he's a between the 20s guy, catches the ball, makes a nice run, is a good athlete. I don't really see him as being a big target at the goal line. The target at the goal line is Kamara. Kamara is the most like Eckler of any back in the league. If he's healthy and on his game, they'll swing the ball to him out of the backfield, inside the 10-yard line. Oh, I'm going to guess 15 times over the course of the season. Because he's not really he's not a guy that you hand the ball to and run up the middle down by the goal line, so you throw it to him. Unfortunately, now the Saints have Williams, right, from Detroit, the big touchdown scorer, might be the best touchdown plunge scorer in the NFL. And so they don't need Kamara to run the ball up the middle down there anymore. So, you have that factor where they're going to run down there more. You have the Kamara factor. That all said, I still think that Olave, he's got a quarterback who throws a good deep ball. He's going to be the number one wide receiver on the team. He's in a terrible division. He's going to get, tons of targets. I mean, I love him as a fantasy selection this year. He's definitely in my second tier and very high of my second tier receivers. I could easily see him scoring 10 touchdowns this year. Easily.
All right. TJ Hawkinson, both priced the same, -125. TJ Hawkinson or Amon-Ra St. Brown? We have two spots to fill on this little 7-teamer here.
Okay. Two different types of players here. St. Brown is kind of, Cooper Kupp light. He's Godwin, Edelman, he runs 5-yard patterns. He catches the ball.
He seems to have some mojo to him, a little extra pizzazz.
I mean, he's gonna, he could lead the league in receptions this year, and heck, he might have last year, as far as I know. And yet that doesn't really work down by the goal line. Hawkinson is a big target. He really developed well after traded to Minnesota. Minnesota's lost Thielen, who was a very dependable, veteran receiver to use down by the goal line. I mean, obviously, this is kind of like the Saints in that you've got a star wideout who's going to get a majority of the passes. Let's make no mistakes about that. But I think Hawkinson is a guy that's going to be used regularly at the goal line. I thought he did really well as a Viking last year. I don't see why it would be any different this year. Again, could be even better with, no Cook there anymore, no Thielen there anymore. They got some nice young talent at the second and third wide receiver spot, but it is young. These guys, they're not going to come out and get 5 TDs this year. I think that Hawkinson is a very solid selection here as a number two scorer on a team that throws a lot of touchdown passes.
Okay.
And Brown, no. I mean, Brown might get to that number, but he's going to have to work hard to get there, and it's not, it's just not his style. I mean, they're a team that spreads the ball around a lot. They obviously just drafted a tight end very early. They've got this, new star running back who might, who knows how good he's going to be. They brought in Montgomery, who's another guy who, scores touchdowns. And then, you got my boy, Jameson Williams, coming back at some point. I I like Goff as a quarterback because he's got so many weapons, but it's hard to, hard to recommend any of them in terms of, well, who's going to score the touchdowns. Heck, they're all going to get 3 or 4 or 5.
Let's I kind of rewind to find a higher paying player. Or just tell me if any of these longer shot dogs you think just kind of stick out. Yes, sir. And I'll give you a group, and we can move on to maybe another favorite. But Elijah Moore, let's see, Dallas Goedert, Jahan Dotson, Thielen, Pittman Jr., Sutton, Drake London, any of those guys?
Can't say I'm crazy about
Right.
any of those guys. I mean,
DJ Moore, plus 115.
Okay, now we're talking. I think this is a very underrated wide receiver. I mean, this is clearly the top wide receiver on a team that, they're very average or below average tight end, below average at the other wideout positions. It's going to, will lead the team in targets, probably 2 to 1. Who knows what's going to happen with their backfield? You got a quarterback who's a wild card. I mean, he had some really good games.
I think you're going to get some cheap numbers on his passing this year, and you're going to be able to take advantage early before they adjust those numbers. That's just kind of a gut feeling.
You're talking about a division that, I mean, where's the defense in there? I mean, certainly not coming from Minnesota. Detroit's a little better defensively, but that's not saying much. And Green Bay is, a very average defensive team. So we talked earlier about those 6 division games. Are they going to be low scoring or high scoring? Well, that's going to be a high scoring division. I just think he's, very similar to New Orleans. I think because he's going to get 140 targets this year, that you can't help it. I mean, 5% of them, 7 touchdowns, one pass out of every 20, he's going to score a touchdown. Well, man, where do I line up for that one? And I think he's he's kind of a, don't want to say sleeper because everybody knows about him, but he's an undervalued wide receiver who I think is a very solid fantasy starter, ideally as your flex this year.
Okay, so here are the 7 players, and if you want to go ahead and kick one off the island, and we'll find another favorite, we'll do so. That's probably Beckham if you want to kick one off. But DJ Moore, Hawkinson, Chris Olave, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Calvin Ridley, and Odell Beckham. Now, he's the longer shot. You want to get rid of him and keep climbing the ladder to get a guaranteed favorite?
No, I mean, okay. What makes Beckham stand out in that group is, among the, you got a handful of tight ends in there, and Beckham, who's kind of like a tight end. I mean, he's built like a tight end. He's used like a tight end. Every time they're down by the goal line, Beckham's telling the quarterback, just lob it up there. Just lob it up there, and I'll bring it down. And it's very possible that he's going to have a real special, chemistry with Jackson. It seems that he feels important in this offense. Like I said, is he going to catch 50 passes this year? Maybe not. But will 15 of them be thrown to him in the end zone? I would say at least one a game. Sure. You throw him 15 balls in the end zone, he's coming down with half of them. So again, especially on a team where, we're not really selling out on him throwing to Beckham because we got to worry about Jackson running the ball, and they have the best or second best tight end in the entire league. We really got to, cover him in the middle of the field. And so, So we single cover Beckham on the outside. He's 45 years old. What can he do?
Yeah, they can open each other up, actually.
And there he goes. He gets this highlight reel touchdown, one every other week, and you're in. So no, I like him. I'd keep him on the ticket.
Okay, and then let me just run down a list of 7 guys real quick. If I decided myself to kick one off the island to give a second ticket a chance, then let's see here: Mike Williams, Mike Evans, Devontae Smith, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, and I can throw DK Metcalf on that list too. These are all ranging between 150 and 220.
These are all,
yeah.
Bigger name guys who you would expect the odds to be a lot lower. I think that Cooper, okay, let me try to, Mike Wilson is a solid selection, but you're dealing with Keenan Allen, you're dealing with Eckler, a couple guys who, that's a lot of competition there. But a team that scores it, that might lead the NFL in touchdowns. So he's not a terrible choice. The guy who you mentioned that intrigued me the most was Cooper. And again, that has to do with, they've upgraded at quarterback, supposedly. I mean, it's going to be real interesting to see, what Watson has this year. I mean, are we going to see the Watson of old? Or are we going to see the Watson who was awful last year? That to me is a bit of a wild card there. But presuming he's, he still has 3/4 of his ability from before, he's going to throw a lot of touchdown passes. And that team just doesn't have a whole lot other than Cooper on the outside. I mean, again, we're talking about a guy who is easily projectable to be the highest targets on the team. A guy who's kind of an all-purpose wide receiver. He scores touchdowns. It's, again, 6 touchdowns, just not one out of every 3 games. He will have had a very disappointing season if he doesn't reach that level. Devontae Smith, I think is another guy who's a safe selection, but this isn't really his style. Brown is a much bigger target at the goal line. Goddard is a guy who scores touchdowns. They've now got 3 running backs to choose between. If they want to plunge it in, they want to run around the end, they want to swing it to the back. I mean, they've just got too many options on that team. So, for a big name receiver, I'd feel less comfortable about him than I do some of these other guys. Metcalf, again, for a big, target guy, he seems to score less touchdowns than Lockett every year. And Seattle likes to run the ball down there. And so, I mean, again, if Metcalf doesn't get 6 touchdowns, his season will have been a big disappointment. But it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't get there. So it would shock me if Cooper doesn't get there.
All right, Dave. So here's our list once again: Odell Beckham, Calvin Ridley, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Chris Olave, T.J. Hawkinson, DJ Moore. All these guys to have 6 touchdowns or more. And let me just ask you, how much do you think that we'll just do the simple $100 bet. How much do you think the $100 bet, what do you think the payout is if all these guys get 6 touchdowns?
Okay. How many guys are there? 6
7.
or 7? 7 guys. Okay. So, I mean, hey, I scored, 800 on my SAT in math. So, I can figure this out. Okay. So, let's see, 100 becomes 300, 300 becomes 1,000, 1,000 becomes 3,000, 3,000 becomes, 29,710.
27,710? Is that what you said?
I said 29,710.
12,971. I thought you were going to lowball that. But so 200, I think that might be worth it, to be honest. So 200, just like you would if you won in some $200 poker game. All right, if you consider that high stakes, which I would, that would be high stakes for me. And it's a fun bet season long, so maybe this is what I'll end up doing here. And there, it's going to be a royalty cut for you, of course, sir, on this. But 200 will pay 25,942. 6 touchdowns for DJ Moore, TJ Hawkinson, Olave, Kittle, Andrews, Ridley, and Beckham. And honestly, Dave, it's not exactly fantasy football, but it's just kind of a different weird way to play it. Like you said, there's a ton of different ways to do it, and there you go. We just produced a ticket.
It's what daily fantasy is all about, and it's what it's what the NFL is heading toward, more and more every day. I'm a little surprised we're not there yet. It's almost like this gambling thing has caught the technology world by surprise. I'm a little surprised that this season we're not fully prepared to have like the play by. Maybe we are. Maybe I'm just I'm behind it. The news, but we don't have the on the bottom of your screen. We've got, here are the odds for the next play. Will this be a pass? -120. Will this be a run? -110. Click and put in your dollar amount. You got 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then click OK. And you've got a room full of people. That's like, oh, yeah. Oh, they're going to pass. Let's put $5 on that, and every game becomes like a party. It becomes like, watching a game at a Las Vegas, sports book, and the people are screaming at things, and it's like, what are they screaming at? I'm watching the Packers and Lions, and the Packers just punted. What are they screaming about? Well, they're screaming over here. Taylor just scored, for the Dolphins. They had him today at -125 to score any touchdown. And it's just it's a fascinating experience. Even if you don't have any action going, it's a fascinating experience just to watch these people and the different things that are going on. Imagine bringing that kind of fun to the household on Sunday morning. And again, I'm certainly not encouraging people that let's start throwing around $1,000 on just next play. And is this kickoff going to go into the end zone or be returned?
We have that luxury here. I mean, Virginia,
$1. $1 a play, $5 a play. Give yourself $100, budget, and you get people in the room yelling at each other. They're going to pass the ball. They always pass on 2nd and 8. And no, hand it off. I mean, it's just it's you create your own sports book kind of environment. I think people would love this. And
doesn't the YouTube delay kind of screw this up a little bit now, though?
Well, I mean that it's again. There's ways of. I mean, obviously this would have to be taken into account, but kind of like the Major League Baseball pitching time clock. It's that what we've learned is. Imagine if we can envision this in baseball, right? Because we see the time clock on every pitch. Like, imagine if across the bottom of your screen, as soon as the pitch is thrown, the catcher throws the ball back to the pitcher. You see, will the next pitch be a ball or a strike?
Over under miles per hour. I've heard that.
150. Yeah. And then you can, that. We're now kind of programmed that, okay, I've got like 10 seconds to make the decision. The batter doesn't have to be ready till the 8-second mark. So even if there's a delay in football, it doesn't take that long to make a decision on something like that. In football, there's a lot more time between plays. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, is that you don't really, you don't want to have to go to the internet. What's their, what do they do most often on 3rd and 2, run or pass? I got to find this on the internet somewhere. we're not going to allow you to do that. But again, that's part of the fun of this. And to me, again, what makes this fun is it's $2. It's $1. It's 50 cents. It's like playing a slot machine. I got 4 cards to the straight flush, on my poker slot machine. I got to go for it, and you go for it and you don't get it. Oh, well, there's another 50 cents down the drain. And so I don't know. I just think that it's, like I said, whether this is going to kind of revolutionize the way people watch sports or not, I think it will, but that remains to be seen. I'm just surprised it's not available yet, because you could see this day coming.
Yeah, they were trying to give you more and more to bet on.
You're starting to see things. You're starting to see things that are going to be available, and maybe, like I said, maybe they are. Maybe it's just that it's not going to be on your TV. Maybe it's going to be on your, especially when as these pro sports leagues start partnering up with, with FanDuel, with BetMGM, with these big companies, who could say, hey, look, we can do this. We can turn every game into a paid subscription. Hey, you want these odds to come across the bottom of your screen? Join our club, $100. Obviously, like I said, it's not going to be for everybody. You're not going to want it on the bottom of everybody's screen. But I don't know. I just think it's going to be a huge success, huge moneymaker, and coming to your town soon.
When's your fantasy draft, Dave? We're going to do our league. I'm doing just one league, just normal league, just like you said. Ours is going to be on Labor Day night during, I think, the LSU Florida State game. I think that's the game on TV. It might be Duke Clemson. I'm not sure which one. But when's your draft?
Well, it hasn't been announced yet. What the day is, but it almost for sure it's either going to be on Wednesday, the day before the first game, before the Chiefs-Lions game, or possibly even during the day on Thursday. I mean, it's and again, I mentioned this before when I was talking about know the rules of your league, know what you're getting into before you sign up. This is a part of it as well. Don't sign, someone, hey, we got a draft tonight. This is going to be a great league. Like, no, you don't want to draft 2 weeks before the season starts. You don't even know what team Taylor is going to be on this year. You don't know a lot of stuff that hopefully we find out more information. We talked about a lot of the uncertainty about the running back position this year. I'm not sure we've answered any of those questions. Heck, Breece Hall is being drafted ahead of Dalvin Cook. I mean, what have we learned? I mean, it's possible that's going to be the way it turns out on opening night. 2 weeks from now, I hope to know the answer for that, because tonight we certainly don't. Anyway, the point is that I think drafting as late as possible is a good thing, and especially in the internet era. I mean, drafts used to be a big thing in fantasy, and I'm sure they still are many places, where you get together, you drink beers, you've got your draft board, you hand out last year's trophy, all this stuff, and that's all great. But
at the Hooters down the street,
like 0.1% of fantasy leagues now. Now it's I've found a league on the internet that I really like, and the same group of guys from last year. We added a couple of new guys, and the nice thing about drafting on the internet is, all right, look, we're going to draft at 1 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday, the day before the draft. And well, I'm working that day. Yeah, so what? Have it on your alternate screen at work. And you can draft from your office, you draft from home, you draft during the middle of the day. And this, like I said, you could even do this on the morning or even the afternoon of the Thursday of opening night. So that's my suggestion is, don't draft. certainly don't draft before this last preseason game. That would be really stupid. Very little will change probably after this game in terms of injuries, but you never know. And it's just, it's just dumb to risk your league on the fact that we drafted 2 weeks ago for no
even
reason.
Practice. Yeah, practice.
And now we come to find out that, whoever, Jacobs is going to hold out for this season, we wouldn't have drafted him had we known what we know now, but we were in a hurry to get our team. And it's fun, I think about it. I think, obviously I think about our draft a lot. I'm trying to project I wish the draft were tonight. But at the same time, it's no. We're way better off waiting until the last minute.
All right, Dave, we'll end it there. We'll get together next week, and we are getting closer to week 1. Wow, we're almost there. Great stuff from Dave Grande with Field Level Media. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
Sure.
Have a good weekend. Yep.
Always fun. You too.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye. We'll be back after this.